Welcome everyone to the Tonkin Legal Group for episode 5 of the Australian Family Law podcast to AFLP, not the official podcast of the AFL. It is your host once again, Joe Charbine, and it's going to be a very special episode today. You've seen the thumbnail. It's going to be a juicy topic, and we've also been joined by a very special guest. But before we introduce her to the panel, we're going to, of course, start with Charlie Robinson. How are you, Charlie?
I'm very well, thanks, Joe. How are you going?
I'm very good, very excited, because this is a topic very near and dear to my heart, as well as to all Carlton supporters out there. Sinjin, how are you?
I'm really well, thanks, Joe. Although I'm suffering from the Tigers thrashing against Freo. I'm having nightmares about Josh. Is it Tracy?
Yeah, Tracy.
For a 23-year-old, he's a star.
We don't want to talk about young stars because Charlie's head will explode with excitement. And of course, we've got the very special Ash Saklevsky. How are you, Ash?
I'm doing well, thank you, Joe. Woo! Exciting to be here. Thank you for having me.
You don't like the footy anywhere near as much as we do. You have definitely a different passion. It is, of course, still football in other parts of the world. Please tell us who you're barring for.
Yes, the world game. I am an unfortunate Spurs tragic at the moment.
Ash, I was a Spurs tragic, but I can't do it after the horrible way they treated Ange.
Yeah. It was sad to see him go after he brought us our first trophy in 17 years. And then we said thank you for that, see you later, and now we're in shambles. So
well, tell us what, for those of us who don't follow the EPL, well, we followed it from afar. What's happened at Spurs?
So Tottenham we sacked our coach that brought us our first trophy in 17 years. Got in a bloke from Brentford, Thomas Frank. Was not doing very well there. So probably after about 6 months, sacked him. Then we brought in an interim manager, Igor Tudor, and he has now departed. He's now departed as well after a 44-day tenure.
Oh my God!
So we're currently without a manager.
How does that happen? How bad can you be in 7 weeks?
Well, we 0 wins in 5 games in the Prem. So, yeah, we're not doing too well. Look, his father passed away, so there was a bit of bereavement there as well. And that's fine. But currently we're without a manager, and we're actually looking at options of getting a player manager interim, not forever, but an interim player manager in, because we're left with pretty limited options. So currently sitting 17th in the Prem, 1 point off relegation. It's a great time to be a Spurs supporter.
Well, I did hear on the radio, I think it was earlier this morning, that somebody had said, when is it time that the players take responsibility for the direction of the club? And is it really, do they have a squad that's good enough? I mean,
no.
Maybe a player rep or player coach is the way to go. Put the onus back on the players.
Yeah, we definitely have to clean up shop, get rid of majority of the people, and just start fresh, in my opinion. There's a couple of people who can stay, but yeah, I think it's kind of the opposite in the AFL, isn't it? You kind of hold on to your, well, they're not managers, are they? They're
the coaches.
Coaches. You hold on to them for a bit too long. Is that sort of what's happening at the moment?
Well, a bit longer than 44 days.
Yeah.
Generally, but I can't remember one that was that short. But I don't know, Charlie. What are your thoughts about Mr. Voss and Mr. Scott?
Yeah, well, I guess going back to Ash's point before. Firstly, I think it's so different in the EPL because the clubs are all privately owned. So it just seems like there's an endless supply of money to pay out all these managers. Whereas
Well, there is in some
yeah,
cases.
exactly, Man City. Whereas in the AFL, there's the soft cap, so that's probably why there's more of a reluctance to sack as openly and freely as they do in the Premier League and other football codes. But I don't know. I think I saw firsthand with the D's the last couple of years with Simon Goodwin how we probably clung on to Goody for longer than we should have. There was probably a romance that he was our last premiership coach attached to it as well. But I think, and he had the recent success. So I think with Brad Scott and Voss, it's a tricky one because they're such big, well, the Essendon being a big club, as we always discuss every week, Joe, to sack the coach, and it's just so much pressure from the fan base. But something's got to give it at some point, doesn't it, Joe?
Well, if Brad Scott was being judged in the same way that if he was coaching for the Spurs, then there's no way he would have got to 0-16. The way, if he was 0-5, no wins in 5 games. We're currently on a 16, I think, losing streak at the moment, if you count last year.
Not a chance. He'd be out.
He'd be out in a rush. And sometimes when you see the writing on the wall with how things are going to end, it's really important, I suppose, that you get your ducks in a row. I saw that there was an article in the newspaper, wasn't sure if it was today or yesterday, talking about what sort of payout would have to be, would entail an early termination of a coach's contract north of $1 million. So I suppose that topic definitely sort of turned our attention to, well, when you see the writing on the wall ending in your own personal relationship, might not necessarily be a $1 million payout, but there certainly could be a payout that is on the cards depending on who's going to keep what. And so it's really important before you pull the trigger, before you decide we're going to go our separate ways, that you do have those ducks in a row and you have some really robust conversations about how things are going to go in relation to property and parenting. And this episode is going to be talking about some of those really important things that you need to consider at the very least and get some advice about from your local family lawyer, that of what you need to do or what you recommended to do before you pull the trigger and actually separate. So that's what we're going to start off with. And I guess you're the leader here, St. John, so I guess we'll let you start things off.
Oh, okay. Without a doubt. I just wanted to say one comment before we move on to the family law issue. It's reminiscent of Damien Harwick at Richmond, where he'd had enough. He was a spent force. He didn't want to coach again. Took a 6-week trip to Italy. Strangely wined and dined by Gold Coast hierarchy in Italy. They chased him down in Italy. And the minute he got back to Australia, he was the coach of Gold Coast with all these new toys, as he would say. Anyway, if you sense some sort of frustration, you're absolutely right. So
you had a dynasty, though. You had a dynasty. You got to forgive
We had a
him for that.
dynasty, and I actually have a T-shirt courtesy of Charlie that has a caricature of dynasty on the back, which is my favourite T-shirt. All right, so Scott might separate from Essendon, Voss might separate from Carlton. People separate in their relationships every day. It's an awful experience for anybody in a separation. And here at the Tonkin Legal Group, we see that on a regular basis, and we're in tune with our clients' needs and requirements. But there are a lot of things you can do to strategically set yourself up in terms of a separation, if that's on the cards, like at Carlton perhaps, and or at the Bombers, dare I say it, Joe. Ash, what do you think would be the first thing you'd think about doing or advising a client if they're in the early stages of separation?
Well, I think something that springs to mind is depending on how you organise your accounts, they might be joint. So, and you might actually not have a bank account in your sole name. So setting up a bank account, putting some cash in there so that, once you decide that that's something that you want to do, you have some money to fall back on and you're not left high and dry and not being able to support yourself or potentially the children as well.
Probably also with redraw accounts as well,
Yeah.
making those double signatories so
Double signatures,
that
yeah.
other party can't withdraw those funds without your knowledge or authority.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that springs to mind is making sure if you're not on title, if your partner is the sole registered person on title, discussing whether or not a caveat is something that is going to protect your interest at that time. If you think that once you separate, they're going to sell the house from you, sometimes it's not the way to go, but having that discussion and making sure that that the advice, and I think that that's another really important thing.
And Charlie, you know a little about collaborative law too, which is a different way of separating with dignity, and some of the lawyers at this office have done the specific training in that regard, so it's capable of getting the parties together in four-way meetings with their lawyers and trying to work through their family law issues without having to use the court or without having to have too much of a nasty experience. But there's no way of making it an easier experience, but it can be a more comfortable experience.
Yeah, I agree. I think it can definitely make things a lot more pragmatic as well, to try and bring together in the same room all the key representatives, the parties' lawyers, or if there's psychologists involved, accountants as well, if there's a business. So I guess another thing to consider, in the event of family violence, is putting safety first. So, working out if there's children involved, whether they're safe, or whether there's any alternate accommodation available for the kids. And obviously there's the option to go down the intervention order path if things are quite serious. So they're kind of the more, I guess, the immediate issues to consider if there are family violence concerns.
Yeah, I think safety plans for children, working out where you can extricate yourself from the situation with safety and protecting the welfare of the children. It's important. Absolutely. Joe, what about you?
I think a very simple one in a lot of circumstances is to just make a note, if you have separated, of what that date is, because there are a lot of the date of separation, whilst you might seem, to maybe just be a formality in terms of what it means for your relationship as a sad milestone, in a lot of cases, this ends up actually starting a clock. If you are in a de facto relationship, you are currently in one where you haven't had a legal marriage, that you're just living together on a genuine domestic basis, you have a 2-year limitation period, which is basically a clock that starts to tick from the date of separation, after which you might be time barred from coming back to the court to seek the court's assistance for a property settlement. So it's really important that and a lot of times it does tend to catch people out. If you are married, you don't have that problem, because that clock does not start ticking until you've actually been granted a divorce. At that point, you have 12 months from the date. But for a lot of people, we're seeing a lot more de facto relationships these days where people aren't getting married. It's really, they tend to get caught out at how little time they actually have left to issue proceedings in the event where there is no agreement. And as much as you can reach agreement, it's really important that where it is safe to do so, obviously piggybacking on what Charlie said, if you are in a safe enough position to negotiate something, it's always worthwhile to stop by, get your independent legal advice from a family lawyer. And I do stress family lawyer as opposed to a generalist, because family law is its own unique beast. And you talk to other non-practicing family lawyers and they look at family law as, oh, geez, and they do their own thing over there. So it's really important that you do speak to a family lawyer who knows what they're doing, that they specialize in that, because you'll get the genuine tailored legal advice to give you the options, and whatever decision you then decide to make at least will be an informed one.
A good point. Good point. Legal advice at the early stage is probably the best way of approaching any separation. There's a lot of information out there now, artificial intelligence, Dr. Google searches. I know from our website's point of view, there's a lot of available information there. Anyone who's watching, welcome to have a look at our information, our articles, our blogs, which in fact there is a pre-separation checklist to have a look at. But ultimately, get the right advice and get on the right pathway and settle the matter as quickly as possible. We didn't touch on the issue of mediation, which is, our preferred method of resolving matters in our firm. We don't mind a fight if we have to go to court, but if you can avoid that and resolve your matter through mediation, and there are various methods of mediation, that's always a much better way of resolving the dispute, and you get to control the outcome of your dispute. So, yeah, it is, as you say, Joe, it's a particular area of the law where you need to seek specific advice, and that's certainly what all of our lawyers at the Tonkin Legal Group are able to provide.
What sort of advice do you think would have to be giving a Michael Voss, for example? What's one piece of advice to keep this guy in a job that you have to give him right here, right now, if we were if he was watching this?
I'd be setting up a mediation with the club ASAP.
Charlie?
If there's a way they could duplicate Jagger Smith, try and find out how to do that.
Ash?
For Tottenham?
For Tottenham, sure, yeah.
I don't think there's a solution there. I'm at a loss. I think we've got a pretty senior player called Ben Davies, who's been in the shout for an interim position. So I say just bring him in and we'll see what happens.
Bring back
Is relegation a real possibility?
We are 1 point off relegation. It is a very real possibility.
With how many games to go? 6?
We wouldn't have many. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head, but we'd be coming to the end, and it's not looking up. We're out of the Champions League. We're out of all the cups. So
maybe there's a spot. Yeah. Maybe there's a spot for Vossi over there.
No.
Sorry, couldn't resist.
If he can't coach Carlton, he can't coach Tottenham. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So thank you all so much for joining us today for episode 5 of the Australian Family Law Podcast here, presented by the Tonkin Legal Group. A massive thank you, as always, to St John and Charlie for giving us their time, and a massive welcome and thanks once again to Ash for coming along. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here. Can we see you again soon?
Happy to be here anytime I need.
Woo.
Ladies and gentlemen,
thanks, Ash. Thank you, Joe.
We got it, ladies and gentlemen. We got it. Hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell to not miss out on any of the videos and podcasts that we put out. And if you're listening to us on Spotify, please rate us 5 stars. Will greatly help with the algorithm. And we'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.